So the first three serials we covered were superhero films, but since I'm reviewing every DC serial, I guess that means for completion I have to review this film too, huh? Hop Harrigan isn't a superhero, he's an ace pilot. I think today comics kind of have this stigma as an exclusively superhero genre. And while that's certainly the majority of comics today, back in the 1940s especially, comics came in a lot of shades, and while superheroes were popular, so too was war comics, romance comics, horror comics, and general action comics like Hop Harrigan was. These days, most DC films are based on superheroes, though it's worth noting that exceptions to this rule have come throughout the history of the company and their many cinematic adaptations. V for Vendetta, A History of Violence, and the Red films are just a few examples of DC Comics properties that were adapted, not revolving around DC superheroes necessarily. Hop Harrigan is a DC character who today isn't very famous, but to put in perspective why this movie was produced back in 1946, we must note that Hop Harrigan in the 40s, much like Superman, ballooned in popularity both in the comics as well as on radio. Kind of the pre-TV set form of leisure entertainment back in the day, with the show running for 4 years and being fairly popular. With the show at its peak apparently receiving over 100,000 fan letters in 1 month, which is pretty much the only viewership statistics we have for an 80-year-old radio program. And how accurate that statistic is pretty hard to prove as well, though based on the amount of time on the air along with the serial it helped produce, probably lends to the fact that at least at first it was a relatively popular show. The story of this serial is pretty meandering, but the long and short is, Hop Harrigan runs an airport he rents out with his buddy Tank, with hangers-on Gail and her younger aviation-obsessed brother Jackie. They're hired to take a pack of mercenaries to bring Dr. Tobar to his lab, where the guy is generating sun-powered energy. They fly, they wander around a boring tarmac set, but eventually we learn of an ace pilot, the chief pilot, who kidnaps Dr. Tobar. More boring shit ensues, then Dr. Tobar decides to use his invention to literally blow up the entire planet Earth, and Hop Harrigan and his 3 buddies decide to assassinate him since for some reason the military and police don't want to see what this crazed mad scientist is up to after such an arrogant threat.
You'd better stay here and tell us how to make it the rest of the way.
But we're there.
We're not in yet.
Yeah, and there's that trick door.
Hop Harrigan, as I said, was a popular show on the radio, but as we're talking about the character in my DC Serials series, he naturally started in the comics, first appearing in All American Comics issue 1 in 1939. All American Comics was a pretty unremarkable comic series for a while until it created the original Green Lantern and would be canceled as that character lost popularity. And even in Green Lantern's own book, the main character became a dog. Streak the Wonder Dog, to be specific. With Green Lantern issue 36 boldly not even featuring Green Lantern himself on the cover, instead replacing him with Streak the Wonder Dog. This, I guess, furthers my explanation that superheroes started to kind of go out of popularity around 1946 when this movie was made. You may ask how this loops back around to Hop Harrigan. Well, honestly, it doesn't really. I just need to make something of this video so it's longer than 3 minutes, so I chose to drop an obscure fact on you guys, so deal with it. Tank also first appeared in All American Comics issue 1. In the film, he was comic relief and buddy of Hop, a remarkable mechanic who's goofy. In the comics, he's pretty much the same. Nothing really changed here. Seems pretty similar from my understanding, but I won't pretend to be some sort of huge Hop head by any means. Those are the only 2 people in the film actually adapted from the comics. Hop Harrigan is the lead of this film and is an ace pilot who found himself in a plot to stop Dr. Torbon's death laser. I literally can't think of anything else to say. Tank is another lead in this film and is an ace mechanic who found himself in a plot to stop Dr. Torbon's death laser. He's pretty goofy. Gail is the female lead of the film and is a woman who found herself in a plot to stop Dr. Torbon's death laser. I literally can't think of anything else to say. Jackie Nolan is the child lead of the film and is the brother of Gail, who also found himself in a plot to stop Dr. Torbon's death laser. Dr. Torbon is based. He's literally just a doctor at first, and then he makes his invention into a death laser, and perhaps I fell asleep or something, but for some reason he just wants to annihilate the entire world with his doomsday weapon, even destroying a whole planet to test the thing. I like this. I think a lot of superhero films, or just films in general, put too much exposition and an explanation on villains' motivations. Not the Harrigan film, though. Dr. Torben wants to obliterate the entire fucking world just to be an asshole. There isn't really anything else to say, and there's really not anything else that deep here. I mean, it's fair. I have copped out on this video quite a bit, but no one's gonna watch it anyways, and I'm gonna continue to cop out when talking about the tone of this movie, because the only thing that comes to mind is boring. The film is just a few characters taking their turns chatting on a tarmac, and then the film cuts to a flight scene, which is disorienting usually, a mix of poorly shot flight footage and some stuff in first-person view, all shot to totally nauseate the viewer. I think if you put out a movie about planes and it fails at its primary goal, which is to show airplanes, then you're kind of cooked. The movie is mostly carefree, I suppose, even the final part, which admittedly is hilarious, but only made more surreal if you watch the preceding 4.5 hours. It's kind of an odd ramp up. Hobb and the other three characters just kind of casually bring guns to shoot down Dr. Torben in his base, since it's just an accepted fact by the world that he's going to blow up the entire planet, which nobody wants to deal with except for Hobb and his three buddies.
Well, we're in the elevator.
There is no elevator. It's just another of Tobo's tricks. It's only a sound effect.
On top of that, he kind of just wanders in, shoots him, and the movie's immediately over.
It's a lucky thing the doors were open, because that last blast blew us right out of the place.
And overall, it just makes for a both anticlimactic and yet over-the-top conclusion to a film that is very loosely about flying airplanes. The music was fairly unmemorable, supposedly done by Lee Zoller, but in the traces of his biography I could dig up, I see no reference to him having done this film beyond credits exclusively on the film's Wikipedia page. The music, whether done by Lee Zeller or someone else, was serviceable, but in service of such a nothing, long film that it's hard to start getting very complimentary towards it. The editing is also pretty weak, done by Earl Turner. The problem is, as I discussed, the flying. It's so bad, as we already covered a bit. Much of the rest of the film is just cutting really standard cuts between various people on a tarmac. I really can't say anything impressive about it, but the flying scenes are so astronomically bad in this airplane movie, I have a hard time giving credit to this film enough to call it serviceable. Though this all could be partially blamed on the director Derwin Abrams or cinematography Ira H. Morgan, and man, Ira didn't have a super hard job. 99% of this film is sitting statically in rooms or on tarmacs. Sometimes they go to one of the Columbia sets, like the rooftop we just saw in the Batman serial. Also, the print I watched was a bit washed, but whatever, it probably looked better on an earlier print, I don't know. I think it's more of film age than anything, because this looks even more abysmal than the Batman film did. It is also definitely a VHS rip, since some of this footage needed to be cropped to get rid of that nice low-fi VHS scrubbing off the bottom. I also hit down the darkness and up the saturation, all shit I couldn't do on my DVD, sadly. I'll try to be positive. At least the planes weren't steered with car steering wheels like in the Batman serial. And this thing in the final part where a mountain blows up was a pretty fun effect, even though it was clearly just a mound of dirt with dynamite buried under it or something, but it looks neat. The film is ultimately a 5-hour piece about people sitting around on a boring tarmac with really boring drama, villains, and effects. The villain feels the same as Batman's, just with less urgency, and sees a lot less play. The last 3 parts pretty much just turns into the Batman serial, with some of the same sets and everything. The planes are pretty much just dropped, and a full 3.5 hours into the film, the plot starts going. Shots and moments just drone on. It's so utterly dull. I will say the last part is really, really funny and over the top compared to what we saw before, which is something, I suppose. I think Dr. Tobar as a villain wanting to literally explode the entire world is something. I like how it's just Hop and his buddies going, despite the newspapers writing about it, and it just being a known fact to everyone in the world. This is not some secret mission Hop is on. He openly says, I'm going to fucking kill everybody.
Soon we'll turn it all on, in every direction, until it covers the entire world.
No military, no police, just 4 dudes with guns. They're also very calm on their mission.
We're after a guy that's gonna blow up the world.
Some people will do anything for a fast ride.
He's on the level. Let's go.
Where to?
Where you found him.
And then the doctor and the henchmen are just kind of shot up and the whole death machine blows up. The climax might be 25 seconds long. There's a 5-second intro where they talk about world peace or whatever, and then a static end screen. It's so bizarre, I don't know.
I give up.
Oh, Tank.
Hop Harrigan is such a scam. This film couldn't have done well. Part of the serial's objective is to have viewers come back week by week and pay to get back in. I can't imagine this really happened with this film. If there's any evidence of this, we need not look forward than the legacy of Hop Harrigan. 5 months after this film came out, the radio show would end unceremoniously in August 1946. Hop would keep going in the comics for a while, but following All American Comics 99, his character would be discontinued, I assume in favor of Green Lantern's dog, if we're judging solely off the cover of this final issue. Hop Harrigan would cameo in the modern Prime Earth DC continuity, but the character is largely a relic born in the Golden Age where he would remain, withering into obscurity forevermore.